You are now listening to The Strange and the Weird with your host, Stefanos Saganakis. Tonight on The Strange and the Weird, I will be talking about character types in novels, video games, and movies. Strange fact of the day. Did you know from Salt and Straw in Portland, Oregon, they actually have a bone marrow and cherry ice cream flavor? Welcome to the darkness. Hey guys, you know me, my name is Stefanos Saganakis, and I'm here with the strange and the weird. The bone marrow and cherry ice cream. That sounds delicious, if you ask me. It sounds horrible. Hold on. Yes, I'm on the right microphone. It just sounds really weird today. Hello? Oh, that's better. Alright. So as I said, today I'm going to be talking about a lot of the character tropes you find in novels, video games, and whatnot. It is it's a very interesting thing that I really want to go into, and I find important in almost any novel or any type of storytelling in general. So first things first, I really want to finish this list of ice cream things. And I saw this is absolutely disgusting. These are outrageous ice cream flavors I just found online. I just decided to look up strange news things, and this is what I found. In London, England, there's this place called the Ice Creamist that sells Baby Gaga breast milk ice cream. That doesn't sound that bad because ice cream's already made out of milk. It's just the concept at that point. In Colombia, hold on. From Sparky's in Columbia, Montana, they have what is this? Chocolate covered cicada ice cream. that ought to add a big nice crunch to your ice cream. And this is the last one. Doesn't sound actually that bad. It's beef wasabi ice cream from Boulder, Colorado, from the Ice Cream Alchemy shop. That's just interesting stuff. I don't know. This was funny. I enjoyed reading these outrageous flavors. It was just funny because if you know me, you know I absolutely love ice cream and sweets in general. All right, back on to the character types in fiction. And if you guys want to call in, we could talk about your favorite character, how they affected the story, or if you want, you could ask any question relating to anything strange and weird that you might not know that you want us to discuss about, or you want me to talk about. Call us in at 386-822-8770. Once again, we do have the swing club behind us, so it might be a little hard to hear at times, but otherwise it should be just fine. All right, so I have a list here of the character tropes you often find in different situations in the story. And I'm going to start off basically just go straight down the list, talk about it, say what I think about them, and note some of them that I could really name off the top of my head. First one we have is a dynamic character. And this website defines a dynamic character as a character who changes over time, usually as a result of resolving a central conflict or facing a major crisis. Most dynamic characters tend to be central rather than peripheral characters because resolving conflict is a major role for central characters. So we're talking main characters here that end up changing. First one I think about is Anakin Skywalker and how big of something I'm probably not allowed to say on the air he is. Anakin Skywalker was, as y'all know, originally a Jedi, right? And with this whole big change, he wanted to save his wife from dying. And bada bing, bada boom, he's in the dark side. And I love it when people talk about the dark side. Like, it's such an easy thing to fall to. And it is, because it was a very big change for that dynamic character, Anakin. But it's a change over time, and people just think it's so sudden. But if you really, really watch a film, if you really, really read a book, you'll see that the change is so subliminal and so amazing. I'll give you an example. If we're talking about Anakin Skywalker as a dynamic character, you go all the way to episode 1 when Palpatine, or Senator Palpatine goes to him, I'll be watching your career really closely from now on. which means Palpatine already knew about Anakin and was planning all the way from Episode 1. What was it, 19 years before anything happened, really? No, 10 years, my bad. 10 years before anything really, really happened, which is pretty, it's pretty big in the concept of foreshadowing, especially if you watch the original trilogy first. And that, a dynamic character, just, it's amazing to see him change. Another dynamic character I can think of, I don't think you guys know this, but there's a show I watched called Natsume in the Book of Friends. In general, this guy can see spirits, and there's always this one guy with him. It's a spirit, sort of like a quote-unquote spirit guard. Like, he's guarding him because his grandmother passed away or something like that. And this guy originally hated the main character Natsume, and he was a main character himself, but eventually, throughout time, throughout the overcoming they had to get through, they became friends. And that's a very common dynamic character, where you have a character who ends up hating one person and then ends up becoming friends or allies. And I'm pretty sure you could relate to that yourself in some way, or you could know a story that happens in some way, shape, and or form. So a dynamic character is pretty important to a story. At the same time, it's also important to knowing what you have in the relationships between the characters, and that I like dynamic characters a lot. All right, now we have a static character. I'm going to tell you guys this is basically the same exact opposite thing. A static character is someone who does not change over time. His or her personality does not transform or evolve. Well, that's boring. We can obviously see this in a lot of antagonists, which this is really cool when you think about an antagonist like that. First one I'm thinking about, because I just talked about Star Wars, Chancellor Palpatine. Or, for example, we could talk about the Cigarette Man in the X-Files. He never really changed. His objective was always the same. You could talk about a whole bunch of people with this. Even some protagonists. We could go with Captain Malcolm Reynolds. He never changed when he was on show. Throughout the flashbacks and the playbacks from his past, he changed. He was dynamic. But in the show, he was pretty static in the way that he kept true to his morals. He kept true to what he wanted to do, and he kept true to what he had in mind to do. He didn't let I wouldn't say like a more corrupted side come to him, so that he could, for example, just let River and her brother be thrown off into the distance in a way, and let them basically get murdered. And the static character I actually find as a pretty uninteresting character, depending on the situation. I don't know if you guys have gone too much deep into connecting with the characters, but when I read a book, I really do my best to connect deep. And I was even able to connect with the characters from The Room. If you guys ever see The Room, well, I'm sorry, first off. It was a horrible, horrible movie. But even then, I did my best to connect. I was able to connect with the characters in some way that I actually got angry at certain parts of the movie. Because Lisa's tearing me apart, Basically, when I connect, I find that the guy who never changes always gets me the angriest. And that's why I don't like it, because it's just the same thing over and over. Why is that person was the same? And maybe when they show a flashback, you start understanding, and then you start sympathizing. But then there are these shows that really do not give you any reason to actually feel bad for that character. They feel bad for that static character. And at that point, you're just like, why does it exist? Why does this character have to be here? It's annoying me. You know what I'm saying? All right. After the static character, we have a round character. Someone who has a very complex personality. He or she is often portrayed as a conflicted or contradictory person. Oh, God. I think that is a character. First thing I thought about was, you guys may not know about this, but if you've ever watched Neon Genesis, first guy I'm thinking about is Shinji Ikari. He is probably the character I hate the most in any show I've ever seen, because he's realistic. He is extremely realistic. Here's the whole plot, basically. It's a semi-apocalyptic type show where you have a 14-year-old boy whose mother died. Father is not the best of fathers. And basically, the father runs this giant organization called Nerve, makes giant robots, classic Japan, thank you, and fights off giant monsters that are to destroy the world, sort of as a godsend or like a plagues type thing. But it's a little more complicated than that. But the thing is, Shinji is the most complex character in the show. You have characters like, for example, Asuka and Rei, who are very single-minded and pretty static in general. Well, Rei 6 is static, and so is Asuka. But you have those characters that are static in general, but then you have the round character of Shinji. He is the most infuriating person because one moment he's really determined to pilot that robot and save the world. The next, he's literally crapping himself and running off on the train. And yeah, it's realistic though. Think about it like this: if you're a 14-year-old kid and you're randomly pulled into this big old secret organization nobody knows about, well, everyone knows about, but it's not the specifics about, and you're basically being coerced to pilot this giant robot you've never seen with no combat experience or any type of debriefing, what would you do? At that point, you just gotta think, yeah, sure, I might have been a wimp before, but now I'm even worse. You know what I'm saying? And it gets worse and worse as this guy progresses. Eventually, he also is a very dynamic character as well. But he has the most complex personality, I think, in the entire show. And even though it is complex, it is infuriating as hell to actually have to deal with him and his realisticness and his whining over and over. I'm pretty sure you can think of some other complex characters. Probably, I would think Han Solo. Han Solo would be a good complex character as well, but he's also a very dynamic character. So a lot of these really go hand in hand when you think about it. Then we have, this one's a flat character. It's the exact opposite. It's one kind of person. Oh, God. Is there just going to be opposites? And yeah, it's probably just going to be an opposites thing. All right. It's pretty simple, guys. This is someone who is very single-minded, very straight to the point. Once again, we go to Cigarette Smoking Man here. We go to any antagonist that has a one viewpoint in mind. We could go to Jigsaw here, if you've ever seen Jigsaw, or the Saw franchise in general, which I don't like. It's too gory. If you have good horror, it's got to be good horror, not a slasher fest. Then we have stock characters. These are characters who become conventional or stereotypical through repeated use of practical types of stories. Stock characters are instantly recognizable by readers or audience members, i.e. the femme fatale, the cynical but moral private eye, the mad scientist, the geeky boy with glasses, or the faithful sidekick. Alright, that's pretty easy, guys. These are also a lot like the flat characters that we'll be talking about. So, for example, Sherlock Holmes is a really stock character. As much as everyone loves him, and I'm not denying the fact that he's a great character, he's a stock character. He's a stereotypical character that a lot of people write but don't portray as well. Or you can basically talk about any Arnold Schwarzenegger, damn, I can never say his name right, character. They are all the same in so many ways. Any military movie you'll have that same commander who always goes, "Get up, you got to see your wife or your kids, and you can't give up on me now." Those are the stock characters. Those are very basic, but at the same time, very enjoyable characters. Because you have that stock character who is comic relief, and I love that character because he's just absolutely crazy and funny in any story, or he or she is crazy and funny in any story you can think about. And it depends how well you use the stock. If you could portray the stock well and portray it in a different way, I think it's a great use that you could use for a story. But if you just sort of dump the stock there as, hey, this is an everyday bookworm kid, and he's going to save the world, it's sort of predicted and boring. And if you want to think about one of those type of kids, think about it like this. You have the stock character of an everyday boy who's sort of just like, I don't want to go through life type thing. It's annoying high school life. And then you have the people who do it well. For example, if you've ever seen Danny Phantom, the cartoon series on Nickelodeon, they did it well. They showed that this kid actually had to go through a lot of stuff and had to go through a lot of personal changes and a lot of interpersonal changes with people that he knew, with people that he had been in contact with for a long time, and even some for a few days, few months. But there's so much to that stock that they gave him. They gave him so much more backstory, so much more personality than just the average stock. And that's what I think made Danny Phantom so good. Had they given him just a normal stock personality, it would have been an everyday thing. The protagonist. Okay, I don't really need to go over this. The protagonist is the main character of the story. Oftentimes, he's the good guy. Sometimes you see him as the bad guy. And oftentimes in video games, you actually get a choice. Let's talk about the Old Republic for Star Wars. Once again, Star Wars references. You actually get to choose good or bad choices to end up either causing the world to fall into chaos, or the galaxy to fall into chaos, or for the galaxy to become serene and all light side and stuff. Or I believe Mass Effect has the same thing. If you've ever played Mass Effect, the Mass Effect series, you have to have choices, and each choice has a consequence. If you choose one thing, someone's going to die rather than the other person. And you might get good points, you might get bad points, or something like that. And there's a lot of Japanese games that have been doing this for years and years, where your choices affect it. And that's what the protagonist does. The protagonist makes the entire story. Not always a good guy, but at the same time, that's what we think of the protagonist as most of the time. We think of him as the good guy, the guy that prevails, which oftentimes I don't agree with. Now the antagonist. I love antagonists so much. Where to start with the antagonist? We can all think of an antagonist in our head. Think of your antagonist. But then think about this. Every villain thinks he's the good guy. You could think about, for example, which is a good example? I want to say Harvey Dent, but I know that he's a good guy, bad guy type, anti-hero type guy, but I can't really say too much. Let's talk about, because I don't know DC, I'm sorry guys. Doc Ock, there we go, Doc Ock. I know a little bit of Marvel. Dr. Octopus, he is a great antagonist to show that, in a way, he was actually a good guy. He was a college professor. If you watch the movies, he was a college professor that actually taught Peter Parker. So I'm not going off the animation at this point. I don't remember the 90s or the 60s animation. And Doc Ock was teaching Peter Parker just, whatever he was in the university. And he really just wanted to make the neuroscience between machine and humans really work and mesh together. He wanted to give humans another life. He wanted to give humans a better way of living through robots, through added augmentations, through so many things. And you see him as the bad guy because he's doing these quote-unquote evil things. But his whole purpose was basically to meld machine and man together to make the world prosperous. Of course, it went downhill when the machine sort of took over, in a way. But overall, he found that it was in his heart of hearts that he could control the machine, and that he was actually a good guy. And that's what I loved about it. He was a good guy. That's like the best thing ever. The fact that you have the bad guys that end up being the good guys, and people still call them the bad guys. And there's a whole bunch of complex characters like this. We could go into this game called Deus Ex, Human Revolution, where you play as an augmented human, which means you have a whole bunch of different choices to choose at the end. Everyone is literally antagonist but you. That's the brilliant part. I love it because you go to your boss, because you're working as a security guard. You go to your boss, and he goes, at the very end, you have a choice basically to either make augmentations good, make augmentations bad, in public view. It's a little confusing. Basically, you get to choose what happens in the world again. So if you listen to your boss, you basically say the corporate truth, right? And that's sort of like, I say, the middle ground. Not the good ending, not the bad ending. It's the middle ground, where you have the truth told, but with a little spin on it. You see what I'm saying? And this is a very interesting choice to be told, because you are literally you're not lying through your teeth. You're bending the truth to your will to make augmentations and to make robotic humans basically sound good. And you end up actually advancing and making the best history of this. In my opinion, make the best ending of this. The other choices are to listen to this guy from a freedom group of some sort, to tell the absolute truth and tell him how bad augmentation is for the body and all that type of stuff. You know, it's a radical truth, if you will. Because everything in all reality is the truth in that game. Everything's the truth. Augmentation helped human beings, but at the same time, augmentation did hurt some human beings. So you had to choose the radical truth, where you could simply tell everyone that augmentation was really bad and that everything was really bad for people. If you got a robotic arm, you were really bad, you were no longer human, etc. And then you had the choice to blow up the facility and everyone in it and let the world choose for itself, which, even though I think is a great idea, that's the ending I chose personally. That's the first ending I chose, just to blow up the entire facility and say no one has a choice in saying it. The world gets to choose for themselves. I like that. I like that ending a lot. That was really a good ending for me. I got a suggestion in from a friend, Madeline. Hi, Madeline. You got your shout out. For an antagonist, I think he's a hero. We got Voldemort. And I did watch the series. I didn't read the books, so I'm not a pureblood. I'm a muggle. I'm a mudblood, if you will. But Voldemort is the classic antagonist that we think about that actually has some reasoning behind him. I'm not quite sure too much on this, but Voldemort had his own reasons to sort of become the Dark Wizard. And in its own way, it had its twisted logic to being right, simply to change the world for what he thought was the better after power consumed him in a way. And that's what a lot of villains do. They want to change the world for what they think is better. And what they think is better oftentimes does not go as better in the human mindset, in the common mindset, if you will. Alright, that was the antagonist. And now we have the anti-hero. The major character, usually the protagonist, who lacks conventional nobility of mind and who struggles for values not deemed universally admirable. Duty in The Apprentice of Duty Kravis is a classic anti-hero. He's vulgar, manipulative, self-centered. Nevertheless, Duty is the center of the story, and we're drawn to his challenges he must overcome and the goals he seeks to achieve. The anti-hero is also a awesome character trope. I really can't think of one off the top of my head. That's a really bad thing, because I know I've seen many anti-heroes before. But if you want to go into any movie or any game you've played... Oh, once again, we could go into games. The anti-hero is a centric hero who, once again, could be the bad guy or he could be the good guy, but struggles with something. So we could go... struggles with his morality. So we could go to Gods Among Us on the DC Comics, where Superman ends up killing the Joker in this here. Hold on a second. There we go. And Superman ends up killing the Joker, and he ends up losing his moral compass in a way because Lois Lane got killed as well. So Batman literally formed a league against the Justice League to fight Superman, who corrupted the Justice League. And people from different universes started coming. It got crazy. But for example, in that series, Superman is the anti-hero. He is the protagonist. He is the guy that you're mostly centered on. But at the same time, he has that struggle that we see a lot of antagonists have, which is really cool. And I like that, because out of nowhere, Superman becomes the anti-hero, and then we have Batman as the hero. And both of them are protagonists in their very own ways. All right, I think we have two more. Then we're going to take a music break. Yes, we do have two more. We have a foil. A foil is a character, usually the antagonist or an important supporting character, whose personal qualities contrast another character, usually the protagonist. By providing this contrast, we get to know more about the other character. I think we can go to Lord of the Rings for this one. when we have Frodo and oh god, what's the guy's name? The guy who always wants that ring. Gollum. Gollum is a very more so self-centered man who's simply going for the ring, while Frodo is trying to take the ring, sort of defeat the ring and its power, which is a very noble cause. Once again, I'm sorry, the swing club is behind me, so when the music break comes up, I'm gonna try to board up the best I can, so that none of the sound gets through. But the foil is a really cool character. So think about Frodo and Gollum in a way. I can see that as a foil. Or if you want, sometimes you can think about the sidekick you have that just goes against everything that the main character would go for. And then we have the symbolic character. Oh god, don't I love these characters. The symbolic character is any major or minor character whose existence represents some major idea or aspect of society. For example, in Lord of the Flies, pity is symbolic of both the rationality and physical weakness of modern civilization. Jack, on the hand, symbolizes the violent tendencies that William Golding believes is within human nature. That's pretty cool when you have characters symbolize it. If you really want to think about it, we all know a show that has every character as a symbolic character. SpongeBob SquarePants. And let me get this right up here right now. Okay. The 7 Sins of SpongeBob. They literally have a character for every of the 7 sins in SpongeBob. So we have, I don't know how they exactly got this one, but SpongeBob is apparently supposed to symbolize lust. I guess you could see that as in that he just loves everything and everyone, but that's a bit of a stretch for me. Squidward is obviously wrath, and that's a little obvious. He gets angry like this, and he has done some bad stuff within the SpongeBob franchise. Patrick, sloth, he does nothing, and when he went to work in one episode, he went to his house, watched TV, ate donuts, and had an ice cream sundae, which I do not know how he put in his briefcase. Mr. Krabs, greed. Plankton, envy. Sandy Cheeks, pride, and oh god, I forgot the name. Gary the snail, gluttony. And that's funny how all those characters symbolize something different, when in all reality it is supposed to be, well, after its original creation, it was supposed to be a kids show. Originally, SpongeBob was meant to be an adult show, filmed on Adult Swim, believe it or not. It was supposed to be like a Family Guy of sorts, but it became a kids show. It's wildly popular with the kids. Anyways, guys, I think I'm going to put you guys on a music break, try to board up the wall a bit so that I could get... And we're back. Give me one moment. There we go. And we're back. Alright, guys. That was Vashnarada by Traffic Experiment. You can find them on YouTube. It's a really great song, especially if you like Doctor Who. Small fact of the day, they got Peter Capaldi's costume down for the next Doctor Who season. It's pretty cool. It's a mix between the Third Doctor's and the Ninth Doctor's costume in a way. If anyone would like to call in, please call in at 386-822-8770. One more time, the number is 386-822-8770. Alright, once again, we're going on with a talk about characters. And, I'm sorry, once again, I've boarded up the windows as best I could, but still. Alright, we're talking about characters, and I really think that there is one character that gets every single role done by himself, and that would be the man from Fight Club. The main character. Let me get his name quickly for you guys. If you ever seen the movie Fight Club, I cannot find this guy's name, can I? There we go. Tyler, that's his name, Tyler. Yes, alright. The guy Tyler, he kept going to like mental institutions and whatnot to sort of get free help and stuff, sort of find a way to lounge around in the very odd way. Tyler is every single character I could think about, because literally he is two characters in the movie at the same time, which is really weird to think about. All right, we talked about this once before. We have a theory about tulpas, and tulpas, that's basically what Fight Club is. Fight Club is a story about a tulpamancer, and these tulpas have sort of the ability to, they don't have the ability. If the conscious person were to let them, the tulpa could sort of take over in a way, sort of like having a second mind, a second person inside your head, take over your body whenever you didn't want to do anything. Oh, I guess that was a misring. Anyways, I just lost my train of thought. Yes. The tulpa is basically, that's what a tulpa is. The tulpa is a second consciousness inside your mind, so that you could, that is made in a whole bunch of different variety of ways. Sometimes it's made in self-defense in a way. Sometimes it's made simply because a person wants someone to talk to. In this case, the man Tyler in Fight Club had a... There we go. You are now listening to The Strange and the Weird. How are you doing?
Pretty darn good, Steph. This is Luke.
Hey, Luke. How you doing?
Pretty good. I just called in because I heard you were talking about the different character types that show up in science fiction and fantasy.
Not just science fiction and fantasy, anything in general, really. But yeah, those are the examples I gave mostly.
Yeah. Well, I actually did a paper on this in one of my courses not too long ago, and a lot of these things have their roots in psychoanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
The first person to write on this was Otto Rank in the late 19th century. He wrote The Myth of the Birth of the Hero, which was a work in comparative religion about the similarities between different religious figures, and that was taken up by Carl Jung in the 20th century to write his famous work on archetypes, which is what inspired people like Joseph Campbell to write his literary criticism of all stories, not just religious stories, which was The Hero of a Thousand Faces. And that book is what actually inspired George Lucas to make the Star Wars franchise, which is funny that you brought up Darth Vader, because he's one of the perfect examples of the archetype in those works.
He is. He really is. Yeah,
and the last thing is basically, since Jung, I guess psychoanalysis has kind of fallen out of favor, but there's definitely a lot of examples of characters who share certain qualities, like you were giving the different examples. But I think the reason we like them and the reason they show up so often is because people do like change, but they also like what's familiar. And so having these kind of stereotypical characters kind of lets you save, lets the author and the audience kind of save brain space for other things.
That makes sense. Save brain space. I like that.
Yeah, I could barely hear you. The swing club must be really going at it.
Yeah, they are. I literally put up posters in front of this really small window we have. You know which window I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. And
I put up binders and everything, but they really are going at it, unfortunately. And I asked them to lighten it up, but I'll talk to them again later. Tell them that still people are having trouble hearing. But I agree.
Well, anyway, I'll let you get back to your show. I just wanted to give my 2 cents, and I hope the second half is as good as the first.
Thank you, and thank you very much for calling in, Luke.
All right, see ya.
See you later. That was Luke Ford. He is one of my friends here at Stetson. Anyways, I'm getting reports that I'm getting through good. I'm getting reports, I don't know. Anyways, here's what's happening. I was talking about the Fight Club, right? And actually, I want to go off what Luke said nice and quickly. Then I'll go back to the Fight Club. Luke said something about the reason why we like the stereotypical characters. For example, the reason why we like all the Robins in every single type of Batman movie, sort of every single spunky sidekick, or every single Jar Jar Binks. Oh God, kill him. But we have a lot of. It's what he says. We save brain space, sort of, and we get familiar with the character a lot easier. Personally, it's not my favorite thing, but I know a lot of people do like it when they have a character you could automatically relate to by having sort of a default setting for it. And that's what you find a lot in different shows, cartoons, animes, video games. You always have that one serious guy who's in the corner, sort of like the shadow king of the entire show or book, and he's just looking there, just right there, and you know he has something to do with the plot, but you have no idea what it is, and then out of nowhere, it's revealed that he's some guy's godfather, like Sirius Black, or he's some guy's father, like Darth Vader, and I don't know. You know he has something more to do with the plot. You just don't know what yet, and that's what we like. We like to have that thing that gives us a little bit of nudge room to get familiar with them. At the same time, isn't exactly the same exact thing, which is why I like it when they do a trope or when they do a stereotype really well and they add a lot of depth to it, like they did with Danny Phantom. That was my prime example. But otherwise, interesting. I think I'll have to read the Thousand Faces book. I'll make sure to read that whenever I have time in between school and everything else. Anyways, back to Fight Club. Fight Club was literally one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen, and one of my favorite things to watch spoofs on. When I was going on about this, the guy literally had a tulpa, which means that he had a second consciousness inside his mind that he brought out whenever he wanted to. So sometimes he saw it from third person, sometimes he saw it from the first person, but all the times he sort of had a general gander on it. He sort of knew what was happening, where it was happening, and how it was happening, even though he wasn't quite there all the time. So when you go to the end of the show, you find out that the guy Tyler had actually been, as Captain America puts it, fondling with the female protagonist named Marla Singer, and they were in a romantic relationship, but it wasn't really him in the romantic relationship. It was the other guy, Robert something, I think it was. Yeah, Robert. And Robert was his tulpa. So the weirdest thing is he was the protagonist, he was the antagonist, he was the round character, yet at the same time he was also a static character, and he was also a dynamic character, and he was literally every type of character you could think about. When you think about dynamic character, the guy changes over time. You see him change from a helpless wimp all the way to someone who knew what he was doing when he was trying to track down the other guy. He was trying to track down his tulpa, but he never knew he was his tulpa yet. He never knew he was a figment of his imagination until sort of towards the end. So when he tried to track him down, he always felt one step behind because his original person was already there. His tulpa was already there. So he changed, but at the same time, he stayed exactly the same because of his tulpa. He was that same wimp all the way through, and at times, his tulpa, which is basically the extension of his consciousness, or second consciousness, was still the same. And yet, he was also a static character. He was also a round character, because just think about how complex he was. He was really complex. He was really deep into the story. He was a really interesting character that you could think is just so confusing at times. Do this, do that. No, why are you doing this? Why'd you punch him in the ear? You know what I'm saying? And then he was very flat, because you could predict every single thing he could do. And you just knew him for that one thing. You knew him for being that moocher. You knew him for a whole bunch of things that just so bare and basic that it was almost embarrassing in a way. The only thing that I don't think he really fit in well with was the stock characters, the conventional stereotype characters. Because of how well-rounded he was, because of how many tropes fit him, he couldn't have been a stock character in my opinion, which is very interesting. That's why I like him as a character. He wasn't a stock. I don't like stock characters. There are plenty of stock characters I like, but because he was the exact opposite of a stock character, or maybe he was too much of every type of stock you could think of in that way. He sort of advanced in his way to his own sort of stock that no one's been able to really recreate in the same light, or from my appearance, recreate at all. He was a protagonist, antagonist, and anti-hero. He was his own foil, and he has his own symbolism. It's just an interesting character that fits every type of trope you could possibly think about. And I love it so much, where they have a character, well, this is the only character I think about that has all these tropes that apply to him and him alone. Which, I just love it. I don't know. I love it. And it just makes him that much more interesting. It really, really does. But let me talk about the stock characters and how exactly people make them differ. And I want to go with superheroes because the first few superheroes were sort of stock characters. You had that classic Mr. Incredible or Superman guy that was super strong, have those superpowers, always super strength, flying, and laser eyes, you know what I'm saying? And after a little while, all the knockoffs got really boring of Superman. They got really boring. But then we got to this movie. I'm not sure if you guys remember this movie. We have a movie called Sky High. I believe that's what it was called. It was a Cartoon Network live movie. And this was about a kid who was from a family of superheroes, stereotypical enough, where his family was super strong, laser eyes and flight and everything like that. And he didn't have powers. This is such a basic trope right there. And he has to go find his powers or something. But what they do is they introduce his powers in such an not really interesting way. His powers are introduced sort of instantly, and at the same time sort of boringly, because he just randomly becomes super strong and throws a table at a guy or something like that. But how they made him evolve as a character, as a dynamic character, was interesting because of his trope. He was never really that weak guy. He was the guy who stood out because he had no powers, but he also worked to get the powers in a way. And unlike Superman, who is sort of born from like, bam, I'm saving a bus full of people from drowning when I'm 10 years old, and then I swim away mysteriously. No, this guy blatantly stopped a school from falling down on the house with his superpowers and pushed it back up. And a whole bunch of other stuff that he did. And his characterization went so far ahead, and it was so good with it. It was really good. I just got word in that Sky High was a Disney movie. I did not know that Sky High's a Disney movie. Man, Disney movies are making good. They make good movies. Another hero I got in was Space Ghost. Space Ghost was a hero, and I remember Dino Boy. These were some old heroes. You see, everything you see in the superhero franchise type things, they're so similar. Space Ghost automatically reminds me of Superman in a way, except for the mask. And the mask reminds me of some other guy, And then that guy reminds me of Hawkgirl, and that guy, It goes on and on and on and on. But it's how they change the trope that makes it interesting. Because everyone wants that big old buff superhero. And I think they did this really incredible in The Incredibles. You had Mr. Incredible, big old macho guy, super strong. But he knew the fact that he was weak. And I love this, because at the very end, you see his wife, Elastigirl, who was an amazing change from the stock as well. I'll explain that in a second. And how do I say this? Mr. Incredible was that stock super buff character that he just wanted to, protect his family and whatnot. But he broke down emotionally before the big old last fight. And he blatantly says, I cannot bear to lose you and the kids, to his wife. And it is awesome to see that big old macho Superman guy break down to his core roots, sort of, to break down to the bare emotions that you never or rarely ever see superheroes go through in such a way. You do see him sometimes in, let's say, for example, Uncle Ben's death, but it's not as touching, I think, because though Uncle Ben's death was pretty sad, it was something that happened where where instead Mr. Incredible was fearing something that could happen rather than something that did happen. And he broke down and basically just let out everything, unlike most superheroes who have to be this one guy just sort of, I'm going to be a superhero guy and have all that big old macho-ness, and I can't feel my emotions and stuff like that for him, which is really, really, really cool. Another thing that, another character, like I said, Elastigirl also had that same thing, where she was that girl who a lot of people were thinking that she was going to be the wife who was constantly nagging and stuff like that, which I never thought of her as that, and I was surprised to learn that people did think of her as the whining person. And I guess you could sort of say that, but I love the fact that when you have her come by, she isn't aggressive, she's just caring, and she is also that strong, independent woman, yet at the same time, instead of being that strong, independent woman trope that, doesn't need a man, doesn't need this, she has that balance, that really good balance that Mr. Incredible had too, from the masculinity all the way to the breaking down, and from the feminine side of Elastigirl all the way to the support, and even I would say a lead, the leading strength in a lot of the scenes that we have. And those are just two tropes that sort of broke their line in a way that was really good, and I liked it a lot. I was just shot in a few suggestions. I was told by Luke Ford, Ozymandias was also a quote-unquote good villain. He wanted peace and order. Ozymandias, I know the name, I don't think I've read the poem too in depth, but I'll take your word for that. Ozymandias was a good guy, but a bad guy. So there are a lot of people like that, and you even see that in the Serenity, if you've ever seen Serenity from Joss Whedon, and Ozymandias from The Watchmen. I don't know who Ozymandias from The Watchmen is. Apparently from The Watchmen, but all I know is the Ozymandias I see here on Wikipedia. So Ozymandias from The Watchmen, he's good, but at the same time bad. I suppose. And then we have the guy from Serenity who is sort of I don't know his name. Darn it. He was after River and the crew, so they could stop to Miranda, which I mentioned last show. He was a lawful guy. He wanted to stop River and everyone. He wanted to stop them and make sure. He offered them many choices to quote unquote live, so that there would be no war breaking out. But he just wanted to stop them to keep peace and order because of failed science experiments. In a way, he's a lot like what Luke is trying to say. The good guy that wants the peace and order. He does. He is going by the law. He is going from what is expected of him by law, sort of way, to protect peace and order, so that people don't go crazy, don't start riots, don't do chaos. And in a way, that is a very good guy thing. But in a way, it's also a very cynical thing. And at the same time, you can think of it as the good guys are very cynical and doing a good guy thing, but very cynically. They're just randomly putting out the news that the science experiment failed and killed so many people and then caused them all to be enemies of humanity, the ones that survived. And now they're going to start riots against these brilliant people who are saving lives in hospitals because 1% of a population on the planet turned evil and started raiding places. in a way, they both have their sinister sides. In a way, they both have their good sides. But in a way, you sort of are forced to realize how much they add up and which one, I guess you would call, is the greater evil or the greater good. And that's opinionated by the person who watches it. That's never a clear thing, because what is better? Is it better to have the people knowing the truth but rioting and causing chaos and destroying hospitals or stopping science from happening, going against a sort of federation that, or was it a republic? I don't quite remember. An alliance that has been in general keeping the place really safe, or is it better to keep the truth away from them but keep peace and order in the way that people won't be freaking out, in the way that people won't be going crazy over the small little fact? Science will go, the alliance won't fall, and in general people will be protected. So which one is the greater evil? Having people know the truth, or having law and order? In a way, that's sort of what it draws down to in that situation. Madeline, you're going crazy over this person named Javert from Les Mis. The person followed the rules, totally perfect, and realized at the end how he was wrong and could not let the rules go. If you know who Javert is, I never saw Les Mis. I tried watching it for the first 5 minutes and I really got bored. No offense, it looks like a great movie if you're into that, but I'm not into that. He followed the rules apparently, and at the end he sort of broke off from that, which is interesting to see. Alright guys, it's just about 10 o'clock. I think I'm just about out of time. This is the end of the strange and the weird. It's getting dark, it's getting cold, and I want you guys to have some fun tonight, alright? So I'm signing off. Have sweet nightmares.
I'm going to Dallas, see my pony run. Going to Dallas just to see my